Hello everyone. Today's story is called The Silverwood Pact, written by Amjad. This is your chance to learn English in a fun and exciting way. We use easy English so everyone can enjoy, understand, and learn while listening. So, grab your headphones, sit back, and let's begin the story. A long, long time ago, there was a forest called Silverwood. It was not an ordinary forest. The trees there were alive with magic. The wind whispered, the roots glowed, and deep inside the forest, hidden under the biggest tree, something was trapped. A demon, a very dangerous one. This demon wanted to destroy everything. But it was stopped. 12 powerful witches came together and made a promise, a pact. Using their magic, they locked the demon deep in the earth, under the roots of the Silverwood forest. The forest became a prison, and the trees kept the demon asleep. But now, hundreds of years later, something is wrong. The trees are dying. Leaves are falling too early. The ground feels cold, and the forest is weakening. In a small village near the forest lives a young herbalist named Emily Carter. She is kind, brave, and very smart with plants. She starts to feel something strange when she walks near the forest. The plants whisper. The wind feels scared. One night, she finds an old book in her grandmother's attic. Talks about the pact, and a warning. If the forest dies, the demon will rise. Now Emily must do something. She must find the descendants of the 12 witches. Only they can make the pact strong again. But one of them has a dark secret. Someone is feeding the demon with magic to set it free. Emily Carter woke up early the next morning. She could not stop thinking about the old book she found in her grandmother's attic. The pages were yellow, the ink was faded, but the words were clear. It told the story of the 12 witches who trapped the demon. It also said that their bloodlines still lived on. That meant their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were still alive somewhere. Emily did not know what to do at first. She had never done magic. She only knew how to make herbal medicines. She grew plants, made tea for sick people, and helped the villagers with cuts and fevers. But now she felt a new purpose. She had to protect the forest. She had to protect the world. She started her search in her own village. It was a small place called Maple Hollow. She talked to the oldest people first. She asked them about their families, about old stories, about strange signs. Most people just smiled and said they didn't know anything. But one old woman, named Martha, looked very serious when Emily showed her the book. Martha told Emily a secret. A long time ago, her mother used to speak to trees. Not like crazy people do, but real speaking. The trees would listen. They would answer. Martha had always thought it was just a family story, but now she was not so sure. Martha gave Emily an old necklace. It had a small stone in the middle that changed color when Emily touched it. It glowed green, like the forest. Martha said her mother told her this necklace was passed down from a great witch named Eleanor. Emily wrote down the name. That was one of the witches mentioned in the book. Emily had found the first descendant. The next clue came from a man named Daniel Reed. He was a school teacher in the next town. Emily met him during a local herbal market. He was kind and quiet, and when she showed him the book, he was surprised. He said his family had an old story about a woman who stopped a great fire using only her hands. She didn't run from the fire. She spoke to it, and it disappeared. Emily asked him if he had anything from her. Daniel said yes. He had a ring passed down through his family. When Emily held it, she felt warm, like standing in sunlight. She smiled. This was another descendant. Emily now had two names: Martha, the granddaughter of Eleanor, and Daniel, the grandson of a fire which named Grace. But things were not easy. Emily had dreams at night, dark dreams. She saw black roots crawling under the ground. She saw red eyes opening in the dark. And she saw someone standing near the demon's prison, holding a lantern. This person was giving light, giving magic to the demon. Emily didn't know who this person was. She only knew one thing. One of the 12 descendants was trying to break the pact. She had to hurry. She had to find the others. And she had to find out who was helping the demon before it was too late. Emily packed a small bag and left Maple Hollow. She knew the other descendants were out there somewhere. The old book gave her more names, first names only, but also clues. It spoke of a woman who could speak to the wind, a man who could turn shadows into light, and a child who once made the rain fall just by crying. Her next journey took her north, to a place called Pine Ridge. It was a town near the mountains, surrounded by cold winds and tall pine trees. Emily felt the air change as she reached the town. The trees here whispered in a different way, softer but full of warning. Something was watching. In Pine Ridge, she asked people about old family stories. Most of them laughed or didn't believe her. But then she met a woman named Claire Thompson. Claire was in her 20s and she worked at a library. When Emily spoke to her about the pact, Claire didn't laugh. She didn't look surprised either. She only asked, "What took you so long to find me?" Claire explained that for years she had been hearing voices in the wind. When she was sad, the wind howled. When she was happy, it danced. Once, when she was 12, she shouted at the sky, and a storm started. Her family was scared of her. They told her to be quiet, to stop imagining things. But she knew the truth. She had a gift. Emily asked to see something. Claire stood near the open window, closed her eyes, and whispered something. The wind outside changed direction. The curtain lifted like a hand. Emily knew this was real. Claire was one of them. Claire gave Emily an old scarf. It had blue symbols stitched into it. She said it belonged to her grandmother, who told her stories about a wind which named Lydia. Emily smiled. She had found the third, but the danger was growing. As they were speaking, a strange noise came from outside, like trees cracking under pressure. Claire looked worried. They ran outside. One of the old pine trees near the edge of town had fallen. But there was no wind, no storm. Its roots were black, as if burned from the inside. Emily touched the tree. She could feel it. It had died from dark magic. This was not nature. This was the demon's work. They needed to leave quickly. Emily and Claire packed their things and decided to travel together. They went east to a town called Riverbend, where the book mentioned water magic. In Riverbend, they met a young man named Jason Wells. He worked as a fisherman. He was quiet and calm, and at first he didn't believe them. But then Emily showed him the book, and Claire showed him the wind trick. Jason didn't speak. He just took them to a lake. He asked them to wait. He walked into the water, up to his knees, and closed his eyes. The surface of the lake became still. Then, slowly, the water rose up like a wall in front of him. Not crashing or wild, just calm, like a mirror standing tall. Emily's eyes widened. Jason was powerful. He explained that his mother told him stories about a woman who could speak to rivers. Her name was Sylvia. She once stopped a flood with her voice. Jason thought it was just a legend. But now, seeing Emily and Claire, he knew it was real. Now there were 4. Emily, Claire, Daniel, and Jason. Each had a gift. Each came from a witch. But while Emily was happy to find them, she was also scared. At night, her dreams were getting worse. She saw the forest again. She saw the demon. It was waking up. And once, in her dream, she saw a face. A real person. Not the demon. A human. A man with dark eyes, standing in the forest with a book in his hands. He smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was cold. Emily woke up in fear. Someone was helping the demon. Someone who looked like them, spoke like them, maybe even one of the descendants. She could not trust everyone. She had to keep searching. But now she had to be careful, because the enemy might already be among them. The group of 4, Emily, Claire, Jason, and Daniel, continued their journey. They traveled in an old van that Jason borrowed from a friend. It was slow, but it gave them time to think, to talk, and to plan. Each of them had questions. Why were they chosen? What exactly had the 12 witches done all those years ago? And most importantly, who was the traitor feeding the demon? Emily kept studying the book. The old pages were hard to read, and some words were missing. But she found a passage that said something important. Only together can the 12 renew the roots. Only with trust can they hold the dark. These words stayed in her mind. They needed 12, but they also needed trust. And trust was difficult now. They headed to a town called Silverbrook, where they hoped to find another descendant. The book mentioned someone with the power of light and shadow. It also mentioned a name, Thomas. That was all they had. Silverbrook was a quiet town surrounded by tall cliffs and deep caves. The houses were old, with ivy growing on the walls. At night, shadows moved quickly across the streets. Emily felt uneasy here. Something about the place was strange. They asked around, but no one seemed to know a Thomas. Most people kept to themselves. But on the 3rd day, a girl named Lily helped them. She was a teenager, full of energy and curiosity. She had heard about someone who lived outside the town, near the cliffs. He was alone, didn't talk much, and only came to town at night. His name was Thomas Gray. They found Thomas living in a small wooden house built at the edge of a rocky hill. He was tall, quiet, and his eyes looked tired. At first, he didn't let them in. But when Emily said the word pact, he opened the door slowly. Thomas had known something was wrong for years. Shadows followed him, even when there was no sun. Sometimes, light in his room would bend, as if afraid of him. He had kept himself away from people to protect them. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but now he was willing to listen. Emily told him everything. About the witches, the demon, the dying trees, and the dreams. Thomas didn't speak much, but then he held up his hand. A shadow rose from the floor like smoke. Then, with a breath, it vanished and turned into a beam of light. Thomas was one of them. He showed them a pendant. It was black and white, shaped like a flame. It had belonged to his great-grandmother, who had told him, "You carry both the day and the night. Use them wisely." Emily nodded. This matched the book story. With Thomas, the group was now 5. They were halfway there. But the danger was getting closer. That night, they set up camp near the forest's edge. Claire stayed up late, listening to the wind. It was quiet, too quiet. No animals, no leaves moving. She woke Emily and said something was wrong. Suddenly they heard whispers, not from people but from the trees. The leaves were speaking, but the voices were cold. Emily stood up, holding the book tight. Then she saw it, something moving between the trees. Not a person, not an animal. A dark shape, almost like smoke with red eyes. Jason threw a wave of water toward it. The shape disappeared, but the water turned black where it touched. Thomas stepped forward and raised his hand. The shadows around them thickened, and the creature backed away. Then it vanished. They had been found. Someone or something knew they were gathering. The group quickly packed and left the forest. They didn't speak much. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The demon was getting stronger, and someone was guiding it. On the road, Emily made a list in her notebook. 5 names: Claire, Jason, Daniel, Thomas, and herself. 7 more to find. She turned to the last pages of the book. There was a riddle written there, one she hadn't noticed before. It said, "To find the heart, look for the flame, born of song and carved in name. Among the stars, one voice will cry, when magic bleeds, the roots will die." Emily read it again and again. She didn't understand it yet, but it felt important, felt like a key. The search had only just begun, but now the enemy was watching. The journey continued. The group of 5 moved from town to town, following the hints in the book. Emily was always reading, trying to find anything useful. Claire studied the skies at night, watching for strange signs. Jason kept training with his control over water, learning how to shape it and even freeze it in the air. Thomas mostly stayed quiet, but his powers over light and shadow were growing. And Daniel, with his strength, kept the group safe whenever they had to face danger on the road. They soon learned that the demon was not just waiting. It was growing. Trees were dying faster now. Some villages had stopped hearing birds in the morning. Forest paths that were once full of green had turned dry and colorless. The forest was losing life little by little. In a town called Rivermouth, Emily found a new clue. An old man at the town's small library remembered hearing about someone named Grace. someone who could heal people just by touching them. He said she lived in the mountains, far from everyone else. Some believed she was a witch. Others said she was a ghost. But Emily knew. This was the sixth. The road to the mountains was rough. Their van couldn't go far, so they had to walk for a day and a night. The wind was cold. The sky was gray. But finally, they found a small stone house near a waterfall. Grace was not what they expected. She was young, maybe in her early 20s. Her hair was golden, and her voice was soft. But her eyes held something ancient, something powerful. She didn't seem surprised when they came. "You're late," she said, standing in the doorway. "The forest is almost lost." Emily explained everything again, and Grace listened quietly. When she heard about the others, her face grew serious. "If you found 5, she said, "you've already drawn its attention. The demon is awake." Grace showed them her garden. It was full of herbs and flowers that didn't grow anywhere else. Some glowed faintly. She said they were protected by her magic. But even her garden had started to weaken. Some plants had wilted. Some leaves had turned black. "The forest's heart is connected to us," she said. "If it dies, we die too." They stayed with Grace for a few days. She taught them how to protect their minds from dark whispers. She gave them herbs that helped them sleep without nightmares. She even healed an old injury on Daniel's shoulder just by placing her hand over it. But one night the demon came closer. It didn't attack. Not directly, but it sent something, a vision. Each of them had a dream that night, a dream that felt real. Emily dreamed of fire, of the forest burning while she stood frozen. Jason saw his sister crying, calling for help, but he couldn't move. Claire saw her own face in a mirror, but the reflection was smiling in a cruel way. Daniel dreamed of being lost in the forest with no way out. And Thomas saw a version of himself standing next to the demon, laughing. They woke up shaken. None of them spoke of their dreams at first, but Grace told them what it meant. "The demon is not just made of fire or shadow," she said. "It feeds on fear, on doubt. If you're afraid, it grows stronger." Emily realized something important. It wasn't just about finding the 12. They had to stay strong inside. They had to believe in each other. If even one of them broke, the demon could win. With Grace now part of the group, they were 6. But then, something unexpected happened. Daniel went missing. One morning, his bed was empty. His bag was gone. No note. No sign of a struggle. Just gone. At first, they thought he went to get something or take a walk. But the day passed, and he did not return. They searched the area. They called his name. Nothing. Emily found a clue near the edge of the mountain path. A piece of cloth from Daniel's jacket caught on a thorn, and next to it a mark in the dirt. A strange symbol, like a twisted flame. Thomas looked at it and said, "The demon took him," or "someone led him to it." The group was now broken. They had found another member, but they had lost one too. Emily sat alone that night, holding the book in her hands. She turned to the riddle again. To find the heart, look for the flame, born of song and carved in name. Among the stars, one voice will cry, when magic bleeds, the roots will die. She didn't know what it meant yet, but it felt closer now, like a thread they had to follow, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. The forest was dying. Their time was running out, and someone, maybe someone in their own group, was helping the enemy. After Daniel disappeared, the group changed. They were no longer just afraid of the demon. Now they were afraid of what was happening inside their own team. Trust became harder. Doubts grew. Every word, every look, every silence felt heavier. Emily tried to stay focused. She believed Daniel was still alive. Somewhere. Maybe under the demon's control, maybe trapped, but not gone. Grace agreed. He's strong, she said. If he was taken, he might still be fighting from the inside. The others weren't so sure. Jason blamed himself. I should have stayed up. I should have heard something. Claire kept checking the sky, looking for signs. But the stars were hidden behind clouds. Thomas said very little, but he seemed troubled in a new way, quieter, more distant. Still, they continued their search for the remaining 6 descendants. The next clue came from an old church in a valley where the trees had stopped blooming. Inside the church was a symbol carved into the stone floor, the same twisted flame they had seen where Daniel vanished. But around it were 12 circles, and only 6 were glowing. Each circle had a name. They matched the names to their group. Emily, Jason, Claire, Thomas, Grace, and Daniel. But then something strange happened. A 7th circle started to glow, though no one else was with them. Emily stepped closer. She touched the name. It said, Luke Harper. None of them knew him, but the name felt important. Jason remembered something. When I was a kid, my mom used to talk about a man named Luke. Said he could move things with his mind. People called him cursed. They followed the lead. It took them across the dry valley to a town called Hollow Glen. The trees there were completely dead. No birds, no sound, just silence and wind. Luke lived in a broken house near the edge of town. At first, he didn't want to talk. He told them to leave. Said he didn't want to be involved in anything magical. But when Grace stepped forward and placed her hand on his chest, his face changed. He saw something, or felt something. He let them inside. Luke had powers, strong ones. He could move heavy objects with only his thoughts. But it caused him pain. Every time he used his gift, he got a terrible headache. He believed it was a curse. But Grace said it was not a curse. It was a gift that needed balance. Luke agreed to join them, but only on one condition. I want to know everything, he said. No secrets. That was hard for Emily. She still hadn't told them everything. Like the page in the book she had hidden, the one that spoke of betrayal. A warning. One among you will turn. She had found it a few nights after Grace joined. And she didn't want to scare the others, so she tore it out and kept it with her. But now, with Luke joining and Daniel missing, the warning felt heavier. They traveled together to the next location. The map showed a place deep in the north, where the snow never melted. The journey took days. On the way, they passed more dying land. The riverbeds were dry. The animals were gone. Even the wind sounded hollow. At night, Thomas kept to himself more and more. Once, Jason asked him what was wrong, and Thomas only said, "I don't sleep much anymore." They reached the snowy hills, and there they found her, a girl named Lily, no older than 17, living alone in a wooden hut. She had ice in her hair and a calm voice. She could freeze anything she touched. When she spoke, her breath turned to mist, even indoors. She had been waiting for them. "I dreamed of you," she said. "All of you. The fire, the trees, the circle, the demon." She showed them her power by freezing a bowl of water in seconds. But she also showed control. She could freeze a tree without killing it. She said her mother taught her, and her mother had learned from someone long ago, one of the original witches. Now they were 8 out of 12. The bond between them grew stronger, but so did the danger. One evening, while setting up camp in the snow, they heard something moving in the woods. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. A man, tall and thin, dressed in black. Emily stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked. The man smiled. "I came to deliver a message," he said. "From Daniel." That made everyone freeze. "What message?" Jason asked. The man looked at each of them slowly. "He's alive," he said, "but he's chosen a side." Before anyone could speak, he disappeared into the trees. No sound, no footprints, nothing. They were left standing in silence, surrounded by snow, with one heavy truth sinking in. Daniel had chosen, but they didn't know what that meant. Had he joined the demon willingly, or was he being used? The line between friend and enemy was starting to fade. The demon was not just attacking their world. It was breaking their trust, tearing at their hopes, and turning them against one another. And still they had for more to find. The group stood in the cold snow, thinking about the message the stranger had brought. Daniel was alive, but something was wrong. If Daniel had truly chosen a side, it meant he was no longer with them. Maybe he had been turned by the demon. Maybe he believed in something different now. Or maybe he had a reason they didn't understand. No one spoke for a long time. The air was heavy. The silence between the group was louder than any words. Finally, Grace spoke. "We have to keep moving. We don't know how much time we have left." They left the snowy hills the next morning. The land ahead looked darker. The trees were dry and twisted. The sky stayed gray, even during the day. Birds flew in strange patterns, and the animals they saw moved like they were scared of something they couldn't see. Their next clue led them to a place called Ash Hollow. It was once a large village, now completely empty. The buildings were broken. The well was dry. The ground was cracked. But on the side of an old schoolhouse, they found a painting. A tree with 12 roots and fire underneath. Claire looked closely. "This is the pact tree," she said. "The place where the 12 witches made their promise." Luke pointed at one of the roots. "There's something written here." It was a name. Evelyn Moore. They asked around in the nearby towns. Most people were afraid to speak. One man whispered that Evelyn was a healer who lived deep in the woods, past the red cliffs. Some called her a witch. Others said she never aged. The group followed the path through the cliffs. The journey was hard. The ground was rough, and the winds carried strange whispers. At night, they heard soft voices, like someone calling their names. But whenever they looked, no one was there. They finally found Evelyn's home in a quiet glade, surrounded by trees that were still green. It was the only place where nature still seemed alive. Evelyn was old, with silver hair and sharp eyes, but she moved with grace, like someone much younger. "You've come for the pact," she said before they could even explain. She already knew why they were there. She invited them inside and gave them tea made from leaves that smelled like honey. Then she listened as Emily explained everything. The demon, the dying forest, the missing descendants, and Daniel's strange message. Evelyn was silent for a while. Then she said, "The demon's power grows stronger when fear grows inside you. That is its way. Not just power over land or magic, but power over the heart. If Daniel has turned, it is not just magic that touched him. It is fear." She showed them her gift. With a simple touch, she could bring dead flowers back to life. Her magic was tied to healing and memory. "I can help," she said, "but only if you all remain true to each other." They stayed with Evelyn for 2 days. She taught them ways to protect their minds. She warned them that the deeper they went, the more the demon would try to break their spirit. "It will show you lies, or truths in the wrong way. You must hold on to each other." Before they left, Evelyn gave Emily something. An old charm shaped like a seed. "When the time comes, this will show you the path." Now they were 9. 9 out of 12. Only 3 left. As they walked through the edge of the glade, the green trees slowly faded, turning brown again. The magic of Evelyn's home did not stretch far. Then one night, as they made camp near a quiet lake, Thomas stood alone by the water. Jason walked over and asked if he was okay. Thomas didn't answer at first. Then he said something that surprised Jason. "I see things," he said. "In dreams, in shadows. I see Daniel. But he's not just him anymore. He's mixed with something darker." Jason didn't know what to say. Thomas continued, "What if he's right? What if breaking the pact is the only way to be free?" Jason looked at him. "Free from what?" "From being tied to this, to a demon, to a forest that wants our lives just to stay alive." Jason was quiet. "But if we don't hold the pact, everything dies." Thomas turned to him. "What if letting it die is the only way to start again?" Jason walked away without saying anything. But now he couldn't stop thinking about Thomas's words. The next day, they reached an old mining town called Blackridge. The town was abandoned except for one person. A young man named Sam lived in the basement of a broken library. He was dirty, tired, and very afraid. At first, he didn't trust them. But when Grace touched his hand, he calmed down. Then he told them everything. He could hear things no one else could. Whispers from the roots of trees. He had once lived in the woods, and the voices had told him to run. "They said the demon was waking up," he said, "and it wanted my magic. Emily asked if he knew about the pact. Sam nodded. My grandmother told me stories. She said I was a child of the forest, that I came from the bloodline of the root witches. They brought Sam with them. Now they were 10 out of 12. But trust was getting harder again, especially with Thomas. He kept walking alone. He spoke less, and sometimes he stared at the others with strange looks, like he was trying to decide something. One night, Emily saw him holding a piece of paper. She recognized it. It was the page from the book, the one that said, "One among you will turn." She had hidden it weeks ago. How did he find it? She didn't ask him. She didn't want to know the answer yet. But in her heart she was afraid. Afraid that the warning was not about Daniel. Afraid it was about someone else still with them. The path to the center of the forest was now clear. The last 2 descendants were found in a quiet mountain village. One was an old farmer named Henry, who had once tried to forget his magical blood. The other was a little girl named Lily, only 10 years old, but with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Both of them agreed to come after hearing Emily explain how the forest was dying and how the demon was waking. Now they were 12 descendants of the 12 witches who had made the first pact. The journey to the place of the pact, the heart tree, was long and dangerous. The forest around it had changed. Trees no longer stood tall. They bent like bones. The leaves were black. The animals had gone silent. Even the wind had stopped. There was no more birdsong, no more insects. It was as if the forest was holding its breath. As they walked, the group began seeing strange visions. Claire saw her father, even though he had died years ago. Jason heard his mother's voice, telling him to come home. Lily cried out, saying she saw fire in the trees. Evelyn had warned them about this. The demon would try to confuse them. It would try to scare them, or tempt them. Anything to break the unity of the 12. Emily kept reminding everyone to stay close, to trust only each other. But even she was struggling. The deeper they went, the more the charm Evelyn had given her started to glow. Felt warm in her pocket, like a small beating heart. Then, at last, they saw it. The heart tree. It was massive, wider than a house, taller than a mountain. Its roots were thick and reached deep into the ground. But the tree was no longer alive. The bark was cracked. The branches were bare. And beneath the roots, there was a hole, a dark opening where the earth had broken open. The demon was inside. The 12 formed a circle around the tree. They joined hands. They began to speak the words passed down through generations. Words of the pact. Words of unity. Words of protection. But before the final line was spoken, a voice called out, "Stop!" It was Daniel. He stepped into the clearing, wearing a long black coat. His eyes were not the same. They glowed with dark fire. His voice was deeper than before, but he still looked like Daniel. Emily stepped forward. "Daniel, we can end this. Come back." Daniel shook his head. "I found the truth," he said. "The pact was never about peace. It was about control. The witches didn't save the forest. They chained it. They forced magic to obey. I set it free." Grace said, The demon feeds on death, on pain. Daniel replied, only because it was made that way. The witches made it a prisoner, and now it wants to live. Thomas walked forward. This surprised everyone. Daniel is right, he said. The pact only keeps things the same. The forest is dying anyway. What if letting the demon go is a way to begin again? Emily looked at him with pain in her eyes. You were the one, she whispered. The one who would turn. Thomas raised his hand and fire came out. But Jason blocked it with a shield of light. The two of them clashed, magic against magic. The others stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Then something unexpected happened. Lily, the little girl, stepped into the circle. She closed her eyes and began to sing. It was a soft song, tune from long ago, a song the witches had once sung to protect the forest. The same one her grandmother had taught her. One by one, the others joined in. Claire, Sam, Henry, then Grace, then Emily. Even Jason and Daniel stopped fighting and turned toward the sound. The song grew louder, and the heart tree began to glow. Its roots pulled back from the dark hole. The sky above it opened. A soft green light poured down like sunlight through water. The demon screamed from below, but it could not rise. Emily took the charm from her pocket and placed it on the tree. There was a flash of white light, and everything stopped. When they woke up, the forest was quiet again. The birds had returned. The trees were still bare, but the ground was green. A single leaf had grown back on the heart tree. It was small but alive. Daniel was gone. No one knew if he had been taken or if he had left. Thomas was still with them, but he said nothing. He only looked at the tree and cried. The 12 had renewed the pact, but they had also changed it. They did not chain the demon again. They built a boundary, a new agreement. The forest would be free to grow and change. But the demon would stay below, not because it was trapped, but because it had been heard, because it had been shown something new. Emily became the guardian of the heart tree. She stayed to watch over the forest. Others went back to their homes, carrying the memory of what they had done. And every year, on the day they sang the song, the forest bloomed again. That was the new pact, not of fear, but of balance, not of chains, but of choice. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story and learned something new today. If you'd like to read the full story again or share it with others, you can download the PDF version of this audiobook for free. Just click the link in the description below and get your copy now. Keep learning, and stay tuned for more stories to improve your English. Happy reading!